Power begins not in force, but in illusion. Long before swords, laws, or kings, there was perception. The earliest rulers did not conquer through armies, but through imagination. They crafted myths that chained the mind long before chains bound the body. A crown is nothing but metal until the masses agree it means divinity. The first masters of control did not fight, they shaped what others believed to be true. They understood a secret the modern mind has forgotten: the world does not obey truth, it obeys narrative. Reality bends beneath the weight of collective belief. If enough eyes see a lie, it becomes the only visible truth. Consider how civilizations are born. One man speaks, another listens, and between their agreement, an invisible empire forms. Words become symbols. Symbols become institutions. And soon, the illusion becomes more sacred than the people who created it. Every religion, every nation, every system of law, each began as an idea whispered by someone who understood how fragile perception truly is. The wise never battle for what is real, they battle for what seems real. When perception is conquered, the body follows. This is why tyrants smile as poets are silenced, and why corporations spend fortunes not to create, but to appear benevolent. The stage of power has never been the battlefield, it is the mind. The soldiers of old wore armor, the rulers of today wear stories. He who defines what is real, defines what is possible. And so, power is less about possession and more about projection. To appear strong is to become strong. To appear righteous is to gather followers. Humans crave certainty more than truth, they would rather believe a comforting lie than face an indifferent reality. This weakness is not accidental, it is the foundation of every system that governs them. Look around, the most dominant figures are not always the most capable, but the most convincing. The world stage rewards illusionists. Charisma replaces character, image outweighs integrity, and perception becomes the new god. Even morality itself is curated, framed, edited, and distributed like a product. But perception is a double-edged weapon. Those who shape belief must also live within it. The illusion that empowers can also imprison. History is littered with rulers devoured by their own myths, prophets who began as messengers of truth but drowned in the adoration of their followers. When you control perception too long, you start believing your own story. That is when the mask replaces the face. There is a certain cruelty in understanding this law. Once you see the strings, you can no longer enjoy the puppet show. You begin to notice how every movement in society, every headline, every act of virtue is staged for an audience. You start to question whether your own kindness, your own ambition, was ever truly yours, or merely a reflection of what the world demanded you to be. And yet, knowledge is power precisely because it is dangerous. The moment you realize perception is malleable, you stand at the edge of control. You can shape how others see you, how they feel, how they obey. But remember, those who manipulate illusion must never forget that illusion manipulates them as well. The first law of dark intelligence is the awakening, the realization that the mind's reality is the only battlefield that matters. Conquer perception, and the world will bend. Fail to control it, and you become the puppet dancing to another's invisible hand. As the candle of illusion flickers, a question lingers in the dark. If perception governs the world, then what becomes of kindness? Is it virtue, or merely another mask, another strategy in the theater of control? And thus, the second law begins: kindness is currency. If perception is the illusion that shapes reality, then kindness is the currency that buys it. The world bows not to the cruel, but to those who can make cruelty appear righteous. Power rarely shouts, it smiles. It extends its hand, cloaked in warmth, even as it measures where the blade might one day strike. What most call virtue, the powerful call strategy. Throughout history, empires have not only conquered with swords but with compassion. They fed the hungry to calm revolt. They pardoned the guilty to appear divine. Even in betrayal, the powerful offered forgiveness, not from love, but from calculation. Because kindness, when timed with precision, can enslave without a single command. Kindness is not weakness, it is a weapon disguised as morality. Humans crave comfort, recognition, and care, they are addicted to approval. A single act of kindness can make them loyal for years. That is why leaders feed hope before taking freedom, why manipulators gift affection before extracting obedience, and why lovers offer understanding right before control. Benevolence becomes the leash they willingly wear. Benevolence buys loyalty, indifference commands fear. The wise alternate between both. True mastery lies in rhythm, the art of giving warmth and then withdrawing it. Too much mercy invites entitlement, too much coldness breeds rebellion. The architect of influence must balance both, a light that guides and a shadow that disciplines. This is the essence of psychological control. Observe how the powerful operate: the teacher who praises sparingly, the employer who rewards once and then watches ambition multiply, the parent whose approval is rare but precious. Every soul, no matter how strong, is still a beggar for kindness. It is the oldest hunger, older than power, older than law. Even the cruel understand this. The tyrant who occasionally spares a life earns deeper loyalty than the saint who saves all. Because kindness, when given from a position of dominance, becomes divine. It transforms fear into worship. The oppressed mistake rare mercy for love, and the manipulator becomes their god. But beware, the use of kindness as strategy comes with a price. The heart that calculates compassion too long forgets how to feel it. The mask of benevolence hardens into the face beneath. Power is seductive because it rewards pretense. Yet every gesture, every word of comfort given for gain, carves another scar into the soul. Eventually, one forgets whether they are kind or merely pretending. This is where the darkness deepens. To weaponize kindness, one must first understand empathy, and then learn how to suppress it. To see suffering, not as pain, but as leverage. It is not cruelty that builds empires, it is selective mercy. The ability to choose when to care, and why. Still, not all who practice this law are monsters. Some use it to protect themselves, to survive in a world that rewards the ruthless. To navigate a society built on masks, one must wear one. And so, kindness becomes a transaction, a currency exchanged for trust, safety, influence. But even transactions have limits. The more you trade compassion, the more it loses its value. When kindness becomes performance, virtue becomes theater. And when theater becomes belief, even the actor forgets the role. The world praises generosity, but it kneels to control. True power, therefore, lies not in the act of giving, but in deciding who deserves to receive. And as the wise play this delicate game, they come to realize another truth. Silence itself can be a form of mercy, or menace. The next law reveals this hidden art, where power speaks not through words but through absence. Thus begins the third law, the silence of power. Kindness, when mastered, becomes performance. But beyond words and gestures lies an even greater force, silence. It is the third and most haunting instrument of power. The powerful do not speak to explain, they speak to command. And when they stop speaking, the world trembles, because silence forces others to fill the void with fear, imagination, or worship. The strongest voices in history were never the loudest. They whispered, paused, vanished from sight, and the world grew obsessed with their absence. The unknown multiplies power, it amplifies presence. For in the human mind, silence is never empty. It echoes with possibilities, each one darker than the last. The first rulers learned this instinctively. When a king went silent, his court grew restless. When a general paused before battle, his soldiers imagined victory, or doom. Silence feeds the imagination of the masses better than words ever could. It turns ordinary figures into legends. They spoke little, and the world filled their silence with fear, admiration, or myth. Even in modern times, the powerful know, to speak constantly is to become common. To disappear is to become divine. Every dictator, every prophet, every master manipulator, each understood the value of withholding. Mystery breeds devotion. Explanation breeds indifference. The absence of explanation is the most terrifying presence of all. A message left unanswered. A look unreturned. A door closed without reason. These moments of silence ignite more anxiety than open hostility. People are not afraid of truth, they are afraid of what they cannot define. And that fear, that mental chaos, becomes the throne upon which silence sits. Those who need to be understood are ruled by those who remain silent. To be silent is not to be weak. It is to make the world speak for you. In conversation, silence disarms the arrogant. In conflict, it unsettles the aggressor. In leadership, it builds an aura of certainty, because humans mistake quiet for confidence. The one who listens controls the one who cannot stop explaining. Consider the courtroom, the negotiation table, the battlefield of love, each governed by the same truth. Whoever breaks the silence first reveals their position, their weakness, their fear. The wise let others fill the air with words until they drown in their own noise. But silence, like all tools of power, demands control. Too much of it breeds confusion and rebellion, too little, and it loses its edge. The art lies in rhythm, the pause between words, the unspoken sentence that forces the other mind to chase meaning. Yet there is a danger within this mastery. The one who rules through silence risks isolation. The fewer explanations given, the fewer understandings remain. And one day, when the mask of mystery slips, the silence turns against its master. Those who once revered now resent. Those who once feared now revolt. Because silence cannot last forever, it must eventually be broken, and when it is, the echo can destroy the one who created it. Still, every true strategist knows this. Noise creates chaos, but silence creates order. To control perception, one must know when to vanish from it. The third law teaches the value of absence, but also its cost. Power thrives in silence, but humanity withers in it. The question is not how long you can remain quiet, but whether you can bear the loneliness that follows. And so the wise student of power, having learned to wield silence, must now face the reflection it creates in others, the mirror that reveals not strength, but weakness. Thus begins the fourth law, the mirror of weakness. Silence teaches control, but once the world begins to listen again, a new illusion must be staged, loyalty. Those who have mastered quiet understand this truth: men do not follow honesty, they follow the illusion of strength. Loyalty, in its purest form, is performance. People swear allegiance not to principles, but to appearances. The powerful have always known that it is not truth that binds hearts, it is theater. In palaces and boardrooms, on battlefields and in bedrooms, loyalty has always been a play, each actor performing devotion for survival, ambition, or comfort. To appear loyal is safer than to be loyal, because sincerity offers no armor. The world rewards performance, not purity. Men swear allegiance not to truth, but to the appearance of strength. History remembers countless kings who were loved only until they faltered. The moment their image cracked, their followers, once drenched in devotion, turned executioner. Loyalty is gravity to power, but only while power stands tall. Once it stumbles, that same gravity pulls it down into betrayal. You see, loyalty is not moral, it is transactional. Every oath carries an invisible condition: as long as you remain strong. When the stage lights dim, when the crown tilts, when the empire shows weakness, the actors of faith begin rehearsing new roles. Once loyalty becomes theater, betrayal becomes strategy. The wise do not mourn this truth, they weaponize it. The great manipulators of history never demanded loyalty, they directed it. They crafted images that inspired obedience, gestures that made followers feel chosen, necessary, or seen. True power doesn't beg for allegiance, it designs the illusion that others want to serve. Even faith is an act when the stage belongs to power. Religions, nations, corporations, all survive on this sacred performance. Symbols replace truth, devotion replaces understanding. The priest bows before the altar not always in reverence, but because the crowd must see him bow. The general salutes not the flag, but the gaze of the soldiers who must believe he stands for it. The wise ruler, therefore, learns to separate what is felt from what is shown. When a subordinate pledges loyalty, the question is not whether he means it, but what he fears to lose if he doesn't. True rulers do not test loyalty with kindness, they test it with absence. Remove reward, remove recognition, and watch who remains. Most will not. And that is when illusion becomes revelation. But understand this: performance works both ways. The master who demands loyalty must also perform it. He must appear unshakable, even when doubt corrodes his core. For power is theater, and every actor fears being the first to forget their lines. The loyal follower studies his master's silence, the master studies his follower's eyes. Both know betrayal is inevitable, only the timing is uncertain. To the one seeking true strength, this law is both shield and warning. Never mistake devotion for safety. Loyalty is not love, it is leverage. It will lift you when you are ascending and crush you when you fall. The secret, then, is not to seek loyalty, but to orchestrate it. Keep every ally slightly uncertain, every devotee slightly indebted. Fear binds longer than affection. Gratitude fades faster than doubt. Those who depend on loyalty die by betrayal. Those who command the performance of it endure. And when the curtain finally falls, when the actors have played their parts, one truth remains unspoken: loyalty ends where opportunity begins. But the next lesson lies beyond the stage, beyond performance itself. Because some power cannot be staged, it must be engineered. Thus begins the fifth law, the architecture of control. Loyalty may be staged, but emotion is the script itself. The actors may change, the scenery may crumble, yet the same invisible currency circulates through every empire, every century, every heart. Gold buys compliance. Emotion buys obedience. For emotion is the oldest currency of civilization. Long before crowns or contracts, before armies and economies, mankind was ruled by what it felt. The tribe followed the one who inspired hope, feared the one who provoked terror, and destroyed the one who made them feel shame. History, beneath its armor of logic, is nothing but a record of emotional manipulation. The powerful trade not in gold, but in guilt, fear, and desire. The shrewdest rulers understood this: wealth can be stolen, armies can defect, but the one who owns your emotions owns you. Every tyrant, prophet, and seducer has drawn from the same ancient market of feeling. Fear builds obedience faster than law. Desire enslaves more quietly than chains. And guilt ensures that even rebellion feels like sin. The strategist of emotion does not shout. He whispers. He studies what people crave, then gives it in doses precise enough to addict, but never satisfy. He praises just enough to make others dependent on his approval, withdraws affection to breed uncertainty, and gifts attention like a god who decides who is worthy of light. He who can make others feel can make them obey. To rule a heart, disturb its rhythm. This is not cruelty, it is architecture. Emotion, properly arranged, is the foundation of hierarchy. The masses believe they choose their masters, but in truth, they choose their feelings. The politician promises safety, the lover promises passion, the priest promises redemption. All three offer the same transaction, emotional control disguised as care. Observe how nations rise not on logic, but on feeling. Revolutions ignite in anger, not in intellect. Religions endure through faith, not through evidence. Markets crash when fear spreads faster than numbers. The human mind, despite its sophistication, remains a creature of pulse. Those who understand that rhythm can conduct entire civilizations like orchestras. Yet, emotion is a double-edged empire. The manipulator who learns to command it must also defend against it. For every emotion mastered in others exists first within oneself. To exploit fear, one must first understand it. To provoke desire, one must feel its sting. The puppeteer, in time, begins to move with his own strings. The masters of dark intelligence know this danger well. They practice emotional detachment not as coldness, but as clarity. They feel, but they do not drown. They empathize, only to map weakness. Their compassion is strategic, their anger controlled, their affection rehearsed. In this architecture, every feeling has a function. Every function, a consequence. But emotion is not only a tool, it is a contagion. A single tear can inspire armies. A single insult can collapse dynasties. The heart is the true battlefield, and those who fight upon it rarely notice until they are conquered. Every empire is emotional before it is political. Every downfall begins not with rebellion, but with resentment. And so, the wise builder of power learns to fortify hearts, theirs and others, before they build cities, systems, or kingdoms. Emotion constructs nations. But memory preserves them. What people feel fades, what they remember shapes eternity. And so, to sustain control, one must not only rule the heart in the present, but also the past that defines it. Thus begins the sixth law, the memory of power. From the silence of power is born the illusion of command, but illusion alone cannot hold an empire together. For influence must not only be seen, it must be believed. And belief, when cultivated among men, takes the form of loyalty. But loyalty, in its purest form, is performance. It is a ritual dressed in the language of faith, yet driven by the machinery of survival. Men swear allegiance not to truth, but to the appearance of strength. They do not follow the just, they follow the unbreakable. Weakness is heresy in the kingdom of influence. Loyalty is not a bond, it is a negotiation disguised as devotion. The powerful understand this instinctively. They do not demand love, they manufacture it. They know that loyalty thrives only when fear and admiration are carefully balanced. Too much fear, and the follower plots rebellion. Too much affection, and he forgets who commands him. The art lies in keeping the chain invisible, yet always felt. History is a theater of loyalties. The faithful knight who turns assassin, the trusted advisor who poisons the king, the lover who betrays with a kiss, each proves the same law: devotion is not truth, it is transaction. When the balance shifts, so does the allegiance. Once loyalty becomes theater, betrayal becomes strategy. The wise ruler does not curse betrayal, he anticipates it. He rewards it when it serves him and punishes it only when it threatens the play. In this performance, everyone is an actor. The courtier bows, the soldier salutes, the friend smiles, all according to script. But behind every gesture lies the same silent truth: loyalty lasts only as long as power does. Even faith is an act when the stage belongs to power. Religion, politics, love, all bend to this same stage. The priest's devotion depends on the faith of the crowd. The politician's promise depends on the hope of his followers. Even the lover's vow depends on the illusion of permanence. Power turns sincerity into theater because sincerity alone cannot hold the audience. The powerful, therefore, do not seek genuine loyalty, they seek predictable actors. They understand that to lead is not to inspire devotion, but to choreograph it. Their followers believe they serve willingly, yet every act of service is rehearsed, every oath pre-approved by the fear of loss. The weak confuse loyalty with safety. They think devotion protects them, that allegiance is armor. But in truth, loyalty is a dagger wrapped in silk. It cuts when the play changes scene. A servant's gratitude can harden into envy, a disciple's reverence can fester into rebellion. The moment loyalty is taken for granted, it begins to rot. Thus, the wise never seek loyalty, they stage it. They understand that human nature does not crave to follow, it craves to belong. And belonging is the easiest illusion to construct. Offer identity, promise security, whisper destiny, and men will kneel, not out of love, but out of need. But the master of loyalty must remain vigilant, for every act of devotion conceals ambition. Today's ally rehearses tomorrow's coup. The same lips that praise will one day curse, and the same hands that protect will, when the music changes, reach for the knife. To rule, then, is not to demand loyalty, it is to direct it. For power is theater, and the stage belongs to whoever controls the light. And yet, beyond loyalty and betrayal lies something far deeper, the invisible current that moves all actors, rulers, and spectators alike, emotion. Because before loyalty can be performed, it must first be felt. Thus begins the fifth law, the architecture of emotion. Emotion builds empires, but it also infects them. Once the heart learns to command others, it begins to crave permanence, and permanence is where corruption begins. Power does not destroy the world through cruelty, but through the slow decay of intent. At the birth of every reign, there is virtue. The ruler begins with purpose, the leader with vision, the lover with sincerity. But the longer one holds control, the more they fear losing it. What was once conviction becomes calculation. What began as service turns into self-preservation. The very light that guided the ascent begins to cast a darker shadow. All power corrupts not through action, but through the decay of intent. It happens quietly, never in a moment of madness, but through 1,000 small concessions. One lie told to maintain order. One compromise justified as necessary. One silence kept to protect stability. The powerful begin to mistake manipulation for wisdom and domination for destiny. And so the moral mind erodes, grain by grain, until the throne stands atop sand. The longer control endures, the more fragile it becomes. Fear seeps in, not of rebellion, but of irrelevance. The king dreads the thought of being forgotten, the leader trembles at the possibility of being replaced. Preservation becomes obsession, and in that obsession, they begin to resemble the very tyrants they once opposed. Eventually, even the just become tyrants in the name of preservation. The tragedy of power is that it transforms its holders into what they once vowed to destroy. The liberator becomes the oppressor, the protector becomes the jailer, the visionary becomes the deceiver. Power is not a throne, it is a mirror that reflects one's true hunger. Every king becomes the villain of his own legend. History repeats this irony with cruel precision. Caesar, crowned for the glory of Rome, falls to the blades of those he empowered. Revolutionaries who promise freedom eventually build prisons of ideology. Even prophets, worshipped in life, are rewritten by followers who twist their words to justify control. No man rules long enough to remain pure, the crown always reshapes the head that wears it. And yet, corruption does not always roar, it whispers. It tells the ruler, you are necessary. It convinces the leader that without them, chaos will reign. It teaches them to confuse their ego for their empire. They begin to defend power not as privilege, but as duty. And in doing so, they rot, righteously. The wise student of dark intelligence recognizes this pattern and learns from it. They do not reject power, they study its corrosion. They understand that authority is not to be possessed, but to be managed, like fire, useful when contained, destructive when worshipped. To hold power lightly is the only way not to be consumed by it. Still, the most dangerous transformation is not political, it is internal. Once the soul begins to serve the throne, morality becomes performance. The ruler convinces himself that cruelty is strategy, that deception is necessity. He forgets that fear does not preserve, it poisons. And by the time he realizes, the poison has already rewritten his nature. Power transforms morality, even the righteous rot when they cling too tightly to control. No empire falls in a day, it collapses from within, long before the first wall cracks. But there is something deeper beneath this corrosion, a force that sustains corruption itself, memory. Because even when power fades, the ghost of it lingers in those who once held it. The past becomes both weapon and curse, shaping every decision that follows. To conquer corruption, one must confront what remains after power fades, the haunting of what was. Thus begins the seventh law, the shadow of memory. After corruption, after memory, after the rise and ruin of empires, only silence remains. It is in that silence that the final truth reveals itself, the truth that unravels all others. For when one masters every law, every manipulation, every hidden mechanism of the human mind, a darker realization emerges: power was never real. What we call control is merely perception reflected back at us. The crown, the weapon, the command, they exist only as long as others believe they do. The tyrant's authority depends on fear, the prophet's divinity on faith, the ruler's dominion on the obedience of the ruled. Remove belief, and all hierarchies collapse like shadows at dawn. Power is not substance, it is theater, memory, emotion, and illusion woven together into a convincing lie. The greatest deception of all is not that we are controlled, but that we believe control exists in the first place. When one masters all other laws, a darker truth remains. Power is not real, it is the illusion that others believe it is. The wise who reach this realization stand at the edge of the human game. They see that manipulation, authority, and even rebellion are all roles played within the same illusion. To command and to submit are merely opposite ends of the same delusion. Both require faith in a structure that was never truly there. Once you see beyond that illusion, all rulers, systems, and gods fall silent. For centuries, humanity has built pyramids of control, kings above peasants, gods above kings, and fear above all. But when the illusion shatters, every level collapses into the same truth: there is no above, there is no below, there is only awareness. The moment one stops believing in the architecture of power, they cease to be ruled by it. This is the paradox the ancients feared, the knowledge the philosophers cloaked in riddles. For a mind that sees through power cannot be governed, not even by itself. It is a freedom so vast that it terrifies the very beings who crave control. The highest power is knowing it never existed. That realization is not arrogance, it is liberation. The tyrant seeks permanence, the sage seeks nothing. The tyrant dies in fear of being forgotten, the sage dissolves, knowing there is no one to remember. The tyrant clings to illusion, the sage breathes it in, then lets it pass. To understand this law is to understand the collapse of all previous ones. Perception, virtue, silence, loyalty, emotion, corruption, all were merely shadows of the same play. Each law taught control, the final law teaches transcendence. The earlier truths bound you to the world, this one releases you from it. But such freedom comes with a cost. Once the illusion dies, so does meaning. To live beyond power is to live beyond purpose, for purpose itself is a form of control. Most cannot bear such emptiness, they return to the comfort of thrones, systems, gods, and names. They rebuild illusions because without them, life feels unbearable. The few who endure this clarity walk among us as ghosts, untouched, unowned, unseen. They do not rule others, they rule within. For in their stillness lies a kingdom without walls, a power that cannot be lost because it was never held. And that is the final paradox. The one who abandons power becomes untouchable. The one who stops needing control becomes infinite. This is the last forbidden page, the moment when the illusion fades, and the seeker becomes the silent witness of all that remains. Thus ends the 10th law, and begins what cannot be taught, the freedom beyond power. The room falls silent. The echoes of the final law fade into stillness, like the last heartbeat of a dying god. What remains is not enlightenment, but exposure. For when illusion dies, there is nowhere left to hide, not behind belief, not behind morality, not even behind self. The narrator's voice, once steady and commanding, softens to something that feels almost human. Yet there is no comfort in it, only gravity. He does not offer redemption, for none exists here. He offers only understanding. And understanding, in the realm of dark intelligence, is the cruelest gift of all. He speaks slowly, as though each word carries a shadow. Every listener who understands these laws begins to see the masks of others, but loses their own. It is not a warning. It is a consequence. For once the mind awakens to the machinery of power, it cannot return to innocence. Every smile becomes a negotiation, every word a weapon, every silence a strategy. You begin to see not people, but motives, threads of fear, guilt, and desire woven through every gesture. At first, this awareness feels like strength. You think yourself free because you finally see the performance. You watch others act, unaware of their own scripts, and feel the quiet thrill of superiority. But the longer you stare, the more you realize, you are performing too. Because to see the masks of others is to recognize that you, too, have worn them. To see the game is to realize you were never outside of it. The deeper one gazes into power, the more it stares back with hunger. Power does not live in thrones or armies, it lives in perception. And perception, once expanded, begins to devour its host. You cannot unsee manipulation, you cannot unknow deceit, and you cannot unlearn fear. The understanding that once promised liberation now binds you to an endless vigilance. Awareness becomes addiction. You start reading the silence in every room, the motive behind every kindness. You no longer trust sincerity, because you know how easily it can be staged. And somewhere in that endless observation, something within you begins to wither. Dark intelligence does not grant control. It removes the illusion that you ever had it. It strips away every comforting lie, the belief in justice, the illusion of purity, the idea that truth and goodness rule the world. What remains is the raw architecture of survival, the dark pulse of human nature unmasked. It is not power that one gains here, it is clarity. And clarity, in its purest form, is isolation. The narrator pauses, his gaze lingering on the unseen audience, on you. Do not mistake knowledge for safety, he says. Power, once understood, ceases to protect. It only reveals how fragile everything truly is. Around you, the silence deepens. It is not emptiness, it is recognition. Every law, every secret, every revelation leads to this moment, the realization that to study power is to study the human condition stripped of illusion. To understand control is to understand fear. To master others is to lose yourself. And so, the forbidden lecture ends not with triumph, but with surrender. Because true mastery was never about domination, it was about awakening. The student who enters seeking power leaves with something colder, quieter, and infinitely heavier: truth. The narrator closes the book, but his words remain suspended in the air, like the final note of a requiem. Power is not learned, he whispers. It is survived. Then, the light fades. And in the darkness, you finally understand. The lecture was never about others. It was about you.